Welcome to a new time. Welcome to a new era.
This ain't WCW. This ain't Monday Night Raw. This ain't SmackDown. This ain't even WWE.
Feel the wrath of the Pythons. You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania. This is where the power lies.
And that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
I got a 66 and 2/3 chance of winning because Kurt Angle knows he can't beat me and he's not even going to try.
It's time to step into the squared circle and get it done.
Welcome everyone to the Legends and Champions podcast for this week. Andy Evans here, coming to you from the United Kingdom. That seems to be my signature every week. This is going to be a really quick intro, guys, because for what you don't know, is that I'm currently recovering from an operation. It was an unexpected operation that took place yesterday. Luckily, we'd already recorded the main part of the show, and I was just waiting to do the 2K25 review, so that'll be coming up. But yeah, I've had a minor operation, which means I'm currently recovering, and I'm a little bit off my head on medication at the moment, so I might talk a little bit gibberish. Who knows? But don't worry, the main body of the show is fine. Hope everyone is doing well. What have we got coming up this week on Legends? Well, this week is different. It's about wrestling video games. Stefan and I are going to go back in time. We're going to talk about Tecmo World Wrestling. We're going to look at some of the big hitters, some of the misses over the years. And I've just realised that after we've recorded this, we haven't talked about Simpsons Wrestling or... Oh man, there were so many. So we're going to go to that in just a second, and then we'll be doing a review of WWE 2K25, which comes out officially on Friday, the 14th of March. Anyone who pre-ordered the Bloodline and the Deadman edition, it came out last Friday, so we'll be talking about that as well. So, yeah, I'm going to go now. I'm going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, it will be Stefan and I talking all about wrestling video games. I'll see you after this.
The Alternate Commentary Table, ACT, brought to you by the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Listen, it's Mitch, it's Dimitri. We got this little pod thing that we do every single week where we talk about the week in wrestling and the way in which we do it from the other side of the railing, right, Mitch?
I like that.
We're coming at it because we love it, we hate it. The Alternate Commentary Table,
ACT.
download it anywhere where you're getting your podcasts.
Shasha.
Welcome back, everyone, to Legends and Champions. It is, of course, the A to the N to the D to the Y to the E to the V to the A to the S to the S. No, I missed the N and I gave myself a double S. That didn't work. And joining me is the S to the E to the... Oh, I'm not doing it again. It's Stefan Bennett. Dude, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Andy. It's that time again to get some Legends and Champions sort of this week.
Yes.
Let's do it, mate. Let's do it.
It's a very different show this week because we are talking Legends, but we're not talking about the Legends of the Squared Circle. We're not talking about a pay-per-view. We're not talking about a superstar. We're talking about video games. Because there is that correlation between wrestling fans and video games that you might have noticed that I've kind of slowly been introducing it on the show over the past 3 weeks, thanks to that wonderful intro by Joe Aguinaldo. But this isn't about any ordinary type of video games. This is specifically because we're a wrestling show. It's about wrestling video games. And that was a very long preambled introduction, and Stefan's eyes told me that because he rolled them at me as if this, like, cue from the Academy Awards, get on with it. So I'm getting on with it. What is it about wrestling video games? Why are they so popular? And why do we as wrestling fans love them so much?
That's a good question. I think it really stems from the fact that obviously from being such a young age, there were tons of wrestling video games. There were some, very few at the time, especially in the mid 80s, that were carried the banner of like WWF or WCW. I mean, they did come. But apart from action figures that you would have at the time, and that it was one of the only other ways that you could really sort of play as your favorite wrestlers and delve into that world, but from a video game stance. And that's the thing with wrestling fans, is anything that's wrestling related content is we lap it up, don't we? We delve into that, and it's always been great fun, and it's been built from there, especially as technology has progressed. And you look at like the how things were. You and I mean, we're the same sort of age, so we grew up watching them evolve to how they are now with like the 2K series, like the graphics and the simulation styles, and that all the way back from like the old NES and Commodore 64 days and that,
See, I was going to do this whole show without referring to the fact that you're 10 years older than I am. You don't need to talk about age, Stefan. We're as old as the video game that we play, which in my case means I'm 3 days old, because that's 2K25. And my mental age also kind of confirms it as well. But you are right. I remember going back in the 1980s with the original NES and that little grey box with the cartridges that you had to blow to make work, and then you put in the machine. And there was a game on there called Tecmo World Wrestling that used to do, I mean, back in the day, they did a load of different things like Tecmo Football and Tecmo Boxing and all that type of thing. But the thing about the Tecmo games was they were completely different to WWF, but they were kind of groundbreaking because you had a 3-ring view, so you were looking directly at the ring. And then you had the commentator calling the action in the best, sort of Joe Rogan tech style that you could do, looking a bit like Dave LaGreca from Busted Open. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of Dave, but he looks a bit like that. And the characters were so bad, the actual graphics were so bad, but yet it was such a cool game that I got a Nintendo because I collect retro games consoles. And the first game I got on that wasn't Wrath of the Black Manta. It wasn't the Marios. It wasn't Blades of Steel, which was a great game if you're a hockey fan. Blades of Glory. Was it Blades? No, Blades of Steel was Tecmo World Wrestling. And you know what? I still can't do it.
Yeah.
I still can't beat the computer.
I tell you, it was such a fun game because, I mean, if you look at the, I still remember when the WWF WrestleMania game came out on the original NES console. And I remember getting it, and I was like, yes, you got Hogan, you got DiBiase, you got Bam Bam Bigelow, you got Andre. And you play it, and you're like, you punch, kick, and that's about it. And you're like, oh, well, like, where's the grappling? Where's the holds? Where's the, I can't even scoop slam someone. What's going on? Where's the finishers? Where's the leg drop? And it was very disheartening. And even to this day, I still wonder, like, what the heck happened? Because if you play a game like Tecmo World Wrestling, you can do moves. And as you said, you've got the commentator in the little box at the bottom of the screen, calling out, oh, here's a pile driver here, and that. So why is it Tecmo World Wrestling can have these sort of moves and this sort of play style, but a game carrying the largest, most famous wrestling banner in the world is WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, turns it into a punch. But even the punches look more like slaps, like more like a slapping kicking simulator. It was really frustrating that I ended up playing like Tecmo World Wrestling, for example, more than I actually did the WrestleMania game.
It was funny because it was like anything when you've got a license, wasn't it? It's like they've got an old game that they've had developed that's not been designed for that brand. They slapped the brand logo on it and they've gone, ooh, this character model that's got a little bit of yellow is Hulk Hogan, right? And I'm with you. I remember it and just kind of walking to the middle of the ring, trying to do a punch and missing, and again, don't know if this was an omen of what was to come, but I lost every match on that game as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it was difficult to play. But I still remember, and even to this day, like it was yesterday, and it was a very long time ago. It was one of my birthdays. I think it might have been my 10th or my 11th birthday. Going to Toys R Us with my birthday money, walking into the video game aisle and seeing there up on the shelf in the Commodore 64 section, this big, bright, beautiful box with Hulk Hogan on and WrestleMania, the game for the Commodore 64. And I remember picking up, because I'd been eyeing it up for weeks, taking it home, inserting the cassette. Yes, kids, we used to play games via a cassette back in the day. If you even know what a cassette tape is.
They don't.
And literally, it was like, it felt an eternity to load your first match. And it was so difficult to play because you'd get into a grapple system and you'd have to wiggle the joystick ferociously to power up your grapple to get the advantage.
Yeah.
Then you would always pretty much lose, and then you'd have to go all the way to back. So you spent probably about 5 hours of your day on loading the game and about 2 minutes playing the game before you'd lose, or if you picked up the win. But that's the days we lived in, and we still loved it. And to be honest with you, in hindsight, as bad as some of these games were, I still wouldn't have changed them for the world.
But it's no wonder that most adults our age have got some sort of repetitive strain injury, because of the joystick, because of the back and forth, rigorous back and forth movement. Yeah. Clean your mind. That's not where I was going. But, looking at the Facebook group, I put a post up on Celebrate Wrestling, which you can join now and be part of the community. And I asked what people's favorite video games were back from the day. And Dave Drasif has also commented on Tecmo, saying they would feature a character that could perform a giant swing. And there was one who did a Cesaro swing before Cesaro did the swing.
Boris Chekhov. I remember him well.
Sir.
Yeah, no, Boris Chekhov. Because Boris Chekhov sticks in my mind because I remember it being at a time where some video games had characters which had such original, non-stereotypical names from where they hail from. Boris Chekhov, yeah, I remember them. And the only other one I remember is Randy Gomez. They're the only two characters I remember from that game.
Who looked remarkably like Hulk Hogan,
yes,
if I remember right, with the white goatee moustache. One of the things that's been mentioned a couple of times in the Facebook group, and something that Lee, who I used to do the Squared Circle with back in the day, him and I used to play this for hours, was WrestleFest in the arcades. And I didn't know Lee back in the arcade time, but we got a copy on emulator and we were playing it back and forth for hours. This thing was brilliant.
Oh, do you know what, Andy? And I'll say this now: I'm lucky to be relatively technologically sound to this day. I have
really,
yeah, surprisingly. I last year I bought a off of AliExpress a retro handheld games console,
yes,
with emulators on, and one of the first games I put on there was WrestleFest and the Superstars arcade games, both made by the same company at the time. WrestleFest, I must have spent so much pocket money in the arcade playing that game. I loved it. It still to this day holds up as one of the best ever. It was so much fun. I
must just put out there, we are not condoning, by the way, the purchase of these emulating pieces of equipment. If you do get one, please make sure you've got the original game before you put the ROM on. So just want to put that caveat out there.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw out there, I do own those, but B, it is all above board. That's what I will say. It is in a non-illegal way.
Yeah. So just want to put that out there before the censor police come after us. I just want to put that out there. One of the things about wrestling video games is there is, as you said at the beginning of this, there is something about being a fan and being able to play as your favorite superstar. And over the years, and we're not gonna do a complete diatribe of 1994. This game came out and it scored this and it scored that. We're going to do a general talk about them. As the years have gone on, and we've obviously entered this next generation era, the graphics have improved as well, to the point now that it is fair to say that sometimes you don't know you're playing a game. It does feel like you're playing as your favorite character. But does that take away from some of the fun of the video game?
See, this is a debate that I have with a lot of a younger generation. I actually remember talking to my partner's son. He's 11. He's into his video games and whatnot. And I've showed him a lot of what graphics used to be like and things like that. And he sort of looked going, oh, that looks nothing like how it is today. I said, no. But the thing is, back then, the gameplay was so much fun. You didn't really care about graphics. I think the very first ever wrestling video game I proper fell in love with was on the Sega Mega Drive, or for our non-European listeners, the Sega Genesis, Wrestle War.
Oh, the Sega one.
Oh, the Sega one.
Yeah.
That game, that was one of the very first wrestling games I ever fell in love with. I used to play the heck out of that game. It was just so much fun, from the grappling system to the striking. It was a challenge until you really got to grips with it. And yeah, it was one of the very first ones I actually was just like, yeah, this is borderline for its time, almost the perfect wrestling game for a system's capabilities. It was brilliant.
And then you contrast that as well. If you look talking about the 16-bit systems, because that's what the Genesis was. The Super Nintendo at the time, or the Super Famicom, if you're in Japan, had WWF Super WrestleMania and the WWF Royal Rumble, which for the first time allowed you to do a Rumble event, admittedly with a limited number of superstars. I think there was only 12 in the entire game, but you could do a Rumble and it had all the, it had the ring aprons, it had all the looks, and it was beginning to feel like it was evolving. But if your partner's son was thinking about the graphics don't look anything like the performers, what the heck did he make of the N64 then, with WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy and WCW NWO Revenge, because of the block, the heads?
Yeah. I see. This is the thing. I mean, I actually at one point last year I was delving through the history of WCW games, because I know the history with WWF games, WWE games, and that. But I was looking at, how WCW games were. I mean, they were poor. They were very poor. I remember the Super Brawl on the Super Nintendo.
On the NES.
There was the NES one. Super Brawl on the SNES. I remember that very well. That I liked because the way they had the ring set up was almost in a diamond, like the angle was like in a diamond. I liked that. I actually loved the look of the game was brilliant. You had the crowd, how colourful it was. Gameplay was not too bad, not too bad. But then when we got to the N64, obviously we know what the graphics were. We don't care, because I'll name two N64 games that still to this day are classed as two of the greatest video games ever released. GoldenEye and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Those two, the graphics are they're not good. They're not great, especially by today's standards. But the gameplay was phenomenal. And when WrestleMania 2000 came out, it had its issues, it had its limitations, but it was great fun. It really was. I was never a fan of the Warzone or Attitude games by Acclaim. They were just weird. But THQ really got this is a wrestling game. We're going to make it feel like a wrestling game. And they implemented, obviously, from games that were made for Japan, Japanese wrestling games. That style came into it. And then, obviously, two games that really do stand out. No Mercy, obviously, and WCW NWO Revenge.
Okay. Whoa. You've said a lot in that segment. And I'm still trying to get over the fact that you've criticised Acclaim. I mean, what? Okay, So let's pick up GoldenEye 64. Not a wrestling game, but did I ever tell you that I met the developer of that? I used to belong to a club in Bournemouth, a Star Trek club. Thank you. Mike would have loved it because he's like me, a massive Trekkie. And it was called the USS Excelsior. As part of Starfleet Command. I was very young. All right, and we actually, all of us who were there, got to play GoldenEye in pre-development stage before it got released. And B. Jones, who sadly is no longer with us, but went on to Rare, she was one of the lead developers of GoldenEye. So yeah, we sat and played that. All of us in multi-game formats on the big, like the big university projector screens, and we used to have it up on there. The graphics didn't hold up that bigger resolution, but you can get it on Xbox Game Pass now.
And the thing is, I have it on there, and I love the fact that it just looks good for its time and runs beautifully. Yeah. It's strange you mentioned those names from there, and I'm familiar with those because I don't know if you actually know this, Andy, and anyone else who may be remotely interested in this. There's a documentary on Amazon Prime Video on GoldenEye video game, and I watched it, and it was superb and really interesting. And I would urge anyone that has any love for that game to go check that out because it was fantastic. But yes, I'm going to dump on Acclaim when it comes to Warzone and Attitude, because I liked for the time, I liked the some of the design. It was just the gameplay wasn't very good. You had to do those button input combos and everything to pull off moves, and and you'd have to constantly pause to bring up the move menu and things like. It lost its fluidity until you had played it for months, and then it was all muscle memory, and you knew it.
Have you played an ambulance match in 2K24?
Yes.
Yes. And you know what it's like now? Just like playing in very long. 35 minutes, and I'm still trying to beat Rey Mysterio in season mode. One of the things about the Acclaim games, though, is you talk about Warzone, you talk about Attitude. That is the same game as ECW Hardcore Revolution. And all they did, because that came out first, Hardcore Revolution, and they literally did what we said earlier on. They got the game, they changed the packaging, and they strapped the WWF logo on it. And that was it. But you would be, I'm sorry to say, remiss about talking about Acclaim without talking about the Legends of Wrestling set. So Legends of Wrestling 1, Legends of Wrestling 2, and then the final one was Showdown Legends of Wrestling, which featured those legends that at the time were either not signed to a WWE Legends deal or had beef with Vince, right? So you had The Warrior, you had Jerry the King Lawler, you had Hulk Hogan, you had Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you had the Nasty Boys. I think Demolition was in one. The Road Warriors was in one. Mr. Perfect was in one. The Iron Sheik. And for the first time, this was where I think, and I love WrestleMania 2000, and I love No Mercy, and they're the inspirations for AEW's Fight Forever, which Kenny Omega has come out and said. But for me, they were the first proper wrestling games where I could say, this is me as a wrestling fan playing a game. Because the character models looked identical. The intros were shocking. They were bad, right? The arenas were rip-offs of Madison Square Garden. So you think you could, even the WrestleMania arena that wasn't called WrestleMania, but was blatantly WrestleMania X7, I think.
Yeah.
But you could imagine that you were in there, and it was when it was pushing the PS2 and the Xbox One to its limits. The Xbox original, not the Xbox One. But I don't know about you, but this is where I kind of went, this is what a wrestling game should be.
Yeah, see, I say, I dumped on Acclaim, but I dumped on Acclaim for Warzone and Attitude.
Okay.
Because the Legends of Wrestling games were a hell of a lot of fun. They were.
And they were difficult.
But I love that because they were a challenge.
Yeah.
Because a lot of WWE games and even 2K, once you master it, and you can pretty much smash through on all difficulties through anyone. And that's something which that's when you kind of start losing a bit of interest in it, and because it's the same and things like that. But the Legends of Wrestling games, they really, really were a challenge. And I agree with what you say about the entrances. I put that down to obviously licensing. Yeah. Obviously, they don't be able to, bring in any of their entrance things really, because back then, none of the actual talent owned rights to their own music. Really.
Oh no, I'm not relating to the music because I think they brought Jimmy Hart in, who did a great job trying to replicate them as close as what they could get. I mean, it's a bit like when you watch, when you play the WWF SmackDown game on the PSX, when you that really weird, like they're walking in front of a big screen, right? And it's like they walk through the screen. Even the AEW games where it's like 30 seconds. That's the only thing I was saying about the entrances were a little bit weird. Yeah. But they were pushing technology to the limit because the PS2 was pretty much at the end of its life by the time Showdown came out. Same with the original Xbox. And it wasn't until really, the PS3 and the X360 came out that, you started getting things like Raw, like WrestleMania 21 on the Xbox, like the WWE series, because that is when THQ got the license. It's when we started seeing the differences. But one of the things that we don't talk about very often when it comes to video games is the spin-offs. And there's one spin-off in particular I would like to talk to you about, because I think this game was ahead of its time, and if it had come out or re-released now, would be a bestseller. And that was Crush Hour.
Oh.
Because Crush Hour was basically Rocket League.
Yeah. It was. I'm glad you brought that up because I've got a big soft spot for Crush Hour. I used to spend so many hours with my friend on there, smashing through that. I know it's divided amongst fans. Some people go, "Oh, that was just a cash grab," and whatnot, which is a fair point, but it was a fun cash grab.
Yeah, but this is also before like the annual FIFA style series, right? Yes. So, you didn't have Attitude, you didn't have Attitude 99, you didn't have Attitude 2000. You had Attitude, then maybe a year later you might get Warzone. 2 years later you might get this. So the spin-offs were needed. I mean, it wasn't as bad as like the Day of Reckoning one where it was a side-scrolling action beat-em-up type game. But this was fun, and it was wrestling to a different audience, right? They were trying to embrace it. But I do think it got, poo-pooed on too much, because if you brought it out now in today's generation of consoles and players, even the Xbox One or the PS4, with the success of Rocket League, it really would have gotten over.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I also think now, I think that a lot of fans now, especially the younger generation, they lap all that. They eat all that up. They love as much content as possible. And if you bring out, multiple different styles of genre of games with the WWE banner attached to it, and that they're going to sell well. I do think that it got scrutinized a little too much and poorly rated, because I think the people that rated it poorly were more in the train of thought of, well, this is pointless. What's, this demolition car game got to do with professional wrestling? Whereas the rest of us were kind of like, I get it. I get what this game is meant to be. And the game was exactly what it was meant to be. And it delivered as it was meant to be. It wasn't meant to be taken too seriously. And for people to go, oh, how dare they, no, not at all. And it was fun. It was different. And, I would have been more than happy if they were to bring out another style game like that. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually surprised. I mean, I don't know if Rocket League ever have actually. I can't remember. I might have this completely wrong. So anyone that's listening who may know this could either tell me if I'm correct or wrong. But I think there might have actually been a WWE DLC for Rocket League at one point.
I think there was. I think you might be right.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I wouldn't necessarily say 2K because I don't think it's their style, but I'd be more than happy if they were to bring out a similar style game with a bigger roster. I can imagine them doing like a Roman, because I used to like the little entrance thing where the music would play and then the car would come out.
Yeah.
You imagine that with Roman Reigns' entrance and everything like that, and the pyros going off, and you got a Roman Reigns car coming out, and then You know, it would be so cool.
Like you could have
really
all
would.
the bloodline coming in different
Yes.
from different sides of the arena,
Yeah.
and then Roman comes up the back with a wise man car, which has got a face of
Oh.
Joe Aguinaldo at the beginning at the front.
Could you imagine if they like R2D2 did, you know, like R2D2 in an X-wing sort of thing,
Oh,
and
that
have
would
like
be awesome.
Roman Reigns' car come out with Paul Heyman like riding on the back of it, like, you know,
Right, 2K. We're giving you ideas here.
Yeah, or if we was to do like they would have like legend cars, so you'd have Hogan's car come out, and you had like Jimmy Hart like riding on the back of it with his megaphone, shouting smack to his opponents and everything like that. Oh, that would be so cool.
But it doesn't need to be cars though, does it? Because you know Hogan's known for the bike, so he could come out on like a Harley type thing, which would make it a bit more. Anyway, going way off topic. You talk about 2K not diversifying. One of the things that we do need to talk about with 2K is Battlegrounds, because I don't really know what to think of Battlegrounds, because let's give you the story. If you don't know the story, 2K20 was released, and it was released far too early, so it was bug ridden. Character models didn't look like the superstars they were meant to be. The entrances were glitched. The match types were botched. There was faults everywhere you could think of, and it got critically and universally panned by both, you know, the video game reviewing industry and fans alike. It was completely destroyed, to the fact that 2K went, right, that's it, we're pulling it. And they pulled the 2K21 game and instead replaced it with Battlegrounds, which was this arcadey style, the arcadey style beat them up. They go completely over the top, and they got big heads and big cartoony bodies. And it was fun for about 5 minutes.
I think it was meant to have been some kind of some kind of unofficial successor to the WWE All-Stars game.
Yes.
Which was very similar, but a lot more fun and better executed. I actually loved the promo videos.
I loved All-Stars. Yeah.
It was so much fun. And I think a lot of the fan base was actually they have been. I've seen it. I've been one of those that have been crying out for a sequel, a follow-up for years. And I remember I was at a point where I was getting frustrated with 2K, because WWE 2K19 wasn't too bad. It was actually it appeared to be a step in the right direction, still had its issues, but step in the right direction nonetheless. And then 2K20 came out, and I used to, at that point, I used to wait a couple of weeks before I would actually buy it, because I wanted to see, you know, what the feedback would be like, and it got panned. I ended up buying it for about, and we're talking British money here, for less than £5 in a sale after, I think it was like 4 or 5 months after it was released. And I played it once. I saw the issues, and I was like, I've only lost about £5 on this. I never played again. I uninstalled it, and that was it. I think it was necessary not to bring out 2K21 and to give them that extra year. 2K22 was better, obviously, but I think what the grievance a lot of fans like myself had was they had an extra year to work on 2K22, but it wasn't a big enough overhaul, and it didn't feel like they'd put as much effort into it as what they could have done in 2 years. But it was still an improvement and a slight step in direction. I think this has become the routine with 2K now, is they'll address certain things. They will bring back old features which fans have been wanting. They'll improve and tweak this, and this. But they'll ignore some of the other fundamental basics that fans have been crying out for, and just say, look, we need changes like this. I mean, this might sound silly, because some people might think, oh, well, this is, you know, it's not overly important. But there's been this thing going on for about 2-3 years now with 2K and fans, where fans have been crying out for the D-Generation X music and Titantron video to be put back into the game, because they have the X, they have all the attire and all that lot, but they don't have the entrance music, they don't have the Titantron. Well, and it's just little things, subtle things like that, which can please the fans.
What I was going to say to you was, we're recording this on the day that they're going to be announcing the DLC packs for 2K25. So we're recording this to break the fourth wall on the 5th of March. 2K25 is released on Friday if you pre-ordered the Bloodline edition worldwide, globally. And apparently today they will be releasing the DLC roster for Season Pass, and one of those rumors is DX. So the proper, the entrance, the character models. But we're going to go to a quick break in just a second. We're going to come back and just wrap this bit up. But talking about 2K, and this is something that I kind of want to address, they took the license over from THQ when THQ went under. And the one thing that gets me about the 2K games, and don't get me wrong, I'm a sucker for it, and I do it every year, right, is they don't change the game. So if you look at the differences between 24 and 25, the character models might be slightly spruced up, but they're the same. And the other thing that really riles me, and I'll get your opinion on this after the break, is My Faction. So I'd love to get your opinion on My Faction and microtransactions after the break. But before we go into break, I want one word. What is the best wrestling video game of the 80s and the 90s? So you got one game.
Oh, the 80s. Wow.
Combined. No, just one game out of those 2 decades. The best wrestling game.
I'm gonna go the 90s, and I'm gonna go with. Oh, it's tough. Do you know what? I'm gonna stick with. Do you know what? I'm gonna go Wrestle War. WCW
Sega Wrestle War 91 on the Sega Master System and the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. We've not even touched on the PlayStation Portable games or the Game Gear games or the Game Boy games. There's not enough time. We're going to get a break. When we come back, we're going to be finishing off talking about the 2K series and getting some ideas on what we would like to see in a future all-in, not AEW, future wrestling game. What would our ideal game look like? We'll talk more about that after this. We'll see you in just a second.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman, and I serve as special counsel and the wise man to your tribal chief, Roman Reigns, the undisputed, uncontroverted, unquestioned leader of the Bloodline, the most dominant group in recent memory and in the entire history of WWE.
The Bloodline has all the damn gold!
For nearly 40 years, I have worked for, alongside, and even employed the absolute greatest superstars to ever do it.
Just how dangerous do you want to live?
I've created the Dangerous Alliance, led an extreme revolution with ECW, and managed the most legendary of all champions. And for me, none of that compares to the relationship I've built with the Anoa'i, Fatu, and Maivia families, the triumvirate that composes this dynasty that we know more colloquially as the Bloodline.
Welcome back to Legends, the second part of the show. Andy and Stefan here talking all about wrestling video games and the year. When we left you, we were talking about the WWE 2K series, and going to continue that now, going to carry on, because one of the things that sends dread down any, or most wrestling fans that I know mind is when they hear these two words, My Faction. So My Faction came out, for those of you who don't know, a few years ago, and it's effectively 2K's way of getting money. It's microtransactions. They do it in the NBA games. They do it in the other games that they produce. And it's a way of saying, right, if you want this card to play with, you can grind, you can buy packs, and you can do X, Y, and Z. The problem with it is that not all of the cards are playable in the main game. So you might be, grinding for hours. That sounds really wrong. You might be grinding for hours and you might get this Finn Balor card that you want, but unless it's a Persona card, it won't play in the main version of 2K24. What's your take on it? Because it's back for 25. There are also developments on it. What's your take on the My Faction play
I
thing.
hate it. I hate it. I wasn't impressed from literally the very first time it was introduced. For those in the UK, Europe, and ever. I used to play the FIFA games and now what they call the EAFC games. One thing that I never ever get involved with is the Ultimate Team things, the money spinners, for different reasons. Number one, I think developers concentrate too much on that aspect of the game that they ignore and get lackluster with core aspects of the game that really need their attention. I don't like the idea of wasting money on microtransactions for, as you just alluded to unlock cards and characters and attires and whatnot that are unavailable in the base game, that you can't carry on into the base game. It's too repetitive. It's just, for me, pointless nonsense. I don't want to have to grind. When I play a video game, especially if it's on a subject that I love, like professional wrestling, I want to be enjoying myself. I want to be able to do what I want to do, not what I'm told I have to do because I want to get this, and this. Now, I believe I belong in one or two Facebook groups which are on WWE games and the 2K games, and the amount of times where I see posts from people saying, "Oh, I finally unlocked this card. It only took me X amount of days grinding non-stop to get it," and I'm just thinking, okay, now you got it. Well, what are you going to do with it? Because you can't use it in the base game. I don't see the point, and I'm not a fan of microtransactions in games anyway. Especially if you're a young child who doesn't have, you don't work because you're at school and whatnot, and you're playing this game, you're only getting a certain percentage of the game available to you, because unless your parents are going to pump money into the game for you, you're not going to be able to do all of these things and obtain all of these things. And for me, not a fan. I used to play the NBA games every year. I was a big fan of the 2K NBA games. I stopped playing them because it became too much on microtransactions and not enough about the gameplay. And the gameplay become very flawed year after year. And this is what worries me about this whole island thing in 2K25, is it is basically the WWE 2K version of the My City or whatever they call it now. And I've been looking at videos of gamers playing that had the preview and played it. It's exactly the same. And they were saying, we spoke to the developers on location and asked them loads of questions about this. And they were saying, you don't have to, not everything's unlockable by VC. Some will be unlockable by challenges. But if you look at the video footage, all of the naff crap stuff is unlockable through challenges. All the good stuff, the stuff that you really want to unlock, is hidden by ridiculously high amounts of VC, like 18,000 VC. You play a match, you win it, you get about 150 VC for a singles match that you win online on the island. For me, it's dodgy. I don't agree with any of it, and it's wrong. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't think we can use the terminology. It's dodgy, but I agree with you in principle. I think that there's not a market for it really. If you look at the cost of living crisis and what people are going through with expenditure, there's this extra pressure on low income families to fork it out so their kids can get it right. And there's the danger of it is also when you're looking at how easy it is for a credit card to be stored on a console. There's been records of FIFA games where kids have gone in there and done thousands of pounds worth of microtransactions without their parents realizing it, because the card's attached to the console. Now, some could say more for you on the parents and not letting them do that, but it is very easy for this to spiral out. I'm intrigued to see what the island looks like, and on Friday I will. But at the same point, I'm with you. There is a concern over the island, and there's a concern over my faction, because what also annoys me about the game, and this is when you look at the big picture of the WWE series, the 2K series, I would say this is actually quite a small thing, right? But it's a big thing to some, but it's a small thing to others, is the fact that these cards that you're getting as a persona card or as a special card are models that were either used in the previous game or are models that are being added to the next game. So again, it's kind of like you're paying for. In some ways, it's kind of like They just go, here's a season pass, similar to what AEW have done. This is a season pass. You can buy these packs and we can add these characters in. We're not going to give you a new game. We're going to buy these packs in. But what you could do maybe is transfer those characters into the new game. So then they give you, carryovers. But that's a fantasy scenario.
I think if that was the case, then it may not be so bad. It might cushion the
blow
of it. So I think as well, especially if it's a game that children are on, very much like the FIFA EA FC games as well, is there's an element there of it potentially like promoting a form of gambling. I think in Belgium, the country Belgium, they've banned games, microtransactions in games in their country because of that. And I do feel that maybe other countries should follow suit on that, because then it may force these game developers to take those out. I mean, there's so many other things they could put in instead of, like My Faction and things like that, which, we'll talk about in a moment, because you want to talk about our ideal game would be. I think let's press on with that, because I think that's, now's a good time to.
Okay, well, let's do that then. So, wrestling games have been going out since the 1980s. We're now in 2025. I think the first wrestling game was released around 1987, 84, 87, I believe, which was maybe the NES Wrestle or the Tecmo games, followed by the WWF licenses. We're in 2025. There has been hundreds of games released. What if we were developing it, if we were building it from the ground up, what would you want?
First of all, I wouldn't want basically what I call lazy to go. I'm always forever commentating on when they release videos of a new superstar's entrance when the new games come out. I always put in there, I critique it. I always believe I'm being fair. I'm not mean to them, but you will see me every so often comment just very simply, lazy 2K, because they rehash out of date entrances, copy and paste from the previous entry. Now, I feel if you are paying all this money, and let's be clear here, to get the Bloodline edition with the best edition of a new release, it's over £100.
Oh yeah, it's $119.99.
Yeah, if you're paying that sort of money for a new game, you want new content. I don't want to see last year's entrance. Like they got when they released the video, the original video of Jey Uso's entrance for 2K25. It was the same as last year with him coming through the entrance. It was all out of sync with the crowd and the music. Everyone got in their case. So now they've released new Jey Uso's entrance with him coming through the crowd. All right, it still needs impressive. I mean, instead of everyone, waving their arms up and down like eating, they look like they're bowing because they're all bending over when they do that, which looks really weird.
Yeah, but just to say, you should be bowing to the greatness of Jey Uso, our new world heavyweight champion. I will make you add.
Well, when it happens, then I'll yeet when if and when he does beat Gunther. So first of all, I would want everything to be as updated as possible. That's the first thing, because you don't want it to feel out of date. If you're bringing legends in and things like that, that's different, because it's always going to be of yesteryear. That's number one. I don't want microtransactions. I don't want My Faction. If they were to do My Faction where it was everything was unlocked through challenges and through playing the game, fine. That's absolutely fine. Then it's the gamer's choice whether they want to play through and put the effort in that way. But to have to pay money for virtual currency to pay for these items, and I don't agree with that. So take that out. So those are the first couple of things that I would.
And I would take all of those things that you've put, but I would kind of go one step further, and I kind of think this is the way games will go in the future, right? Because we're going to be moving soon to cloud-based. Right? We're already starting. You're seeing it on remote play, and you're seeing it on Game Pass, and you're seeing it on this type of thing. I would do a base game. Okay? So I would have a base game. And then I would develop that game via character packs. So a bit like DLC, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd have a base roster, and that's what you get. So that base roster could be 200 superstars, like NXT, WWE, right? You take your Jey Uso example. One thing that 2K are good at is the patches throughout the year, right? So we're currently on patch 25 for 2K24. We're on patch 1 or patch 2 for 2K25 because it's not released yet. But they are good at piping and patching things in. And they've done that throughout the game. And new characters being added as well, right? You smiled at that bit.
No, it was just that you said 2K were good at patching. I've lost count the amount of times they've introduced a patch halfway through the year and it's broken another aspect of the
game. Yeah, I was trying to be positive.
Sorry,
Damn you. I was trying to be positive, Stefan.
But, you know.
And then what I would do then is you've got the ability, you can buy a pack. If you want to buy this pack, buy this pack. And if you want to buy this, which is the island, for example, buy that. And you keep developing it. And next year, you've got the base game. If you want to buy the new features that are coming out, buy that. Because then 2K are going to get more money, realistically, in a potential way. Because you're still going to get people buying the game.
Yeah.
And then buying all the transactions. The only downside to that will be...
I just want to add to what you just said there about doing that. I like the idea of, let's say, for example, like in an alternative world here, because he's already debuted. Let's say, Penta's debuted on Raw, and then like a few weeks later or a month later, it's like, coming soon. Penta is available on DLC now for a price of, I don't know, $2.99, $3.99 or whatever, and you'll be able to bring him in. You can keep the roster updated as it goes. Yeah, I love that idea. Absolutely love that idea.
I mean, like you said, if the character... So, by the time you're recording this, who knows what's going to happen? Rey Fenix, we know, is out of AEW, right? So for all we know, recording this, Rey Fenix might debut on Monday, on Netflix. But he might not. But let's just say he does, right? You put a little graphic down the bottom of the screen, pre-order Rey Fenix now on the PS Store or the Xbox game, or the Xbox Store. Pre-order it now. You will get it on this date. Because you're not going to get all the DLC now anyway, because it's coming out across the year. But you also know the WrestleMania 41 pack is not being released until after WrestleMania 41, normally around SummerSlam time, or at least it was last year. Yep. So you're getting people to pre-ordering it. You are going to get a mass amount of people pre-ordering that content.
See, this is the thing I don't agree with, where a lot of people turn around and say, oh yeah, but the reason why they can't add the player in is because they missed the cut-off date when all the talent were getting scanned for the game and all that. And I just think, I get that, but, when someone signs a contract and they join the WWE, they do all the promotional material anyway. They do all the merchandise stuff. They do the photo shoots. They do all the prepping of things. Fly them into 2K, get them scanned.
Yeah, but I mean, there is a cut-off point where to get the game out, you have to do a cut-off. So a lot of people have been going...
current structure, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have been going, the releases back in December and January, why am I still playing as Sonya Deville? Why am I still playing as Baron Corbin? You can't have everything. And I'm not against that. I don't mind that you're playing as a released superstar, because you might not have wanted the guy to be released anyway, or go.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? So I got no problem with that. But what I'm saying is, this could be the last generation of 2K. It's WWE 2K. And then every year, every month, you can buy new content if you wanted to. But it goes in the game. Not in my faction. It could be that they still could keep the island if they want, right? But it could be that, it could be there's going to be a new match type. Let's say WWE do the deadline match, right? That's not on 2K. The NXT one, or the Championship Scramble. I love that. I haven't referenced Championship Scramble in 3 years. They do a Championship Scramble at a PLE. 2K could say, and now you can play Championship Scramble.
Yeah.
And it's piped into the game. The downside to it, and I get why they won't do it, is development costs would be through the roof. You would need to have a team developing it all the time. But again, ideal world, this would be brilliant. And you wouldn't need to keep upgrading the game, just like with FIFA. Right, if they did that with FIFA, it would be exactly the same. Or what's it called? FC now?
FC 25 is the current one. Yeah.
So I've got FC 24 on Game Pass. It's no different to FC 20 to FIFA 23.
FC25's worse.
Okay, but
It really is.
But do you know what I mean? They're not. There's nothing different about them. It might just be the rosters are slightly changed.
I do think there is that element, especially like as FC, and we're not going to go on to football or soccer games anyway. But the logic's the same as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Is I do feel, and because there's not a direct rival on the market to rival those games anymore. I mean, I remember with FIFA, it used to be the Pro Evo or PES, as people call it. They used to put, and now that they've changed their model and gone to like an online thing where they just update every season or so often. It's just made the EA version of soccer games like forefront. There's no challenge there. It's a bit like the Monday Night Wars. Once WWE bought out WCW, WWE started going stale. It's a very similar thing. I think companies need to be pushed and to bring out the best of each other, or try to bring out the best of each other, because there's not enough improvements that really warrant a new release at full retail price on an annual basis. Yeah. There's really not. And
and I think you're absolutely right there. And I think we were hoping that AEW's Fight Forever would have been that alternate game, and even back in the day, and we haven't referenced it, TNA Impact, which I still think is a great game. I enjoyed that one. It's difficult.
It's got its charm. I'll say it's got its charm. It's got some lovable aspects for that game.
Do you know what? I remember getting that game on the PS3, and I was off sick. I had laryngitis, so I couldn't do anything, right? And I literally sat at home for a week and played it. And I kept getting to the Kevin Nash match and kept going, no, I can't do it. I think it was Kevin Nash. It was one of the matches. I couldn't get very far in it. But I love that game. And I still play that game to this day.
It's got its following, and it wasn't a great game by certain standards, but for what it was, I was actually probably more upset that they never released another TNA game.
Midway went bust pretty soon after, but somebody else could have picked the license up.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put something to you, Andy Evans.
Oh
right?
no!
No! Right. Forget just WWE and what's already out and what we would do with the current series.
Yeah.
If someone was, if a major game developer that we could trust, even if it was 2K, turned around and said to you, Andy Evans, you're a big wrestling fan. We admire all the things you've done throughout your career in the wrestling business and that. And I'm going to give you your flowers here. We want you to come up with an idea for a wrestling game you actually want to see that you think the fans will love. Because I've got an answer for that for me, but I want to get your take. What would yours be?
What would what say it again?
What would your ideal wrestling game be if they said to you, right, give us an idea of a wrestling game and we'll make it. We'll put it out there that you think you and the fans would love to see.
So it would be a cross.
And let me just clarify, because this might change your train of thought. Sorry to interrupt. Licensing is not an issue.
So it would be Legends versus Current. So it would be Legends versus Future Greats, the LFG series.
Yeah.
Where you would have some sort of a game. You would still have the exhibition mode.
Yeah.
But the storyline would be enhanced, that you're doing the LFG journey to earn an NXT contract. And you're going up, you've got a coach, a bit like the UFC, you've got a coach, you're going to do that with a group of people, you're going to avoid being axed, you've got to develop your promo skills, so you're going right back to the beginning, you develop your in-character skills, and then you work your way up all the way through NXT, and along the way, you play the Legends, and you play the Future Greats, and then you've got this roster across Impact, across New Japan, across AEW, across the WWE, across the NWA, from the 80s to the 90s to the noughties to the 10s, and then the 20s. So you're looking at the NXT roster and who that would be, or who's the blue chippers coming up from, and that would be mine. It would be rid of that. It would be LFG.
I love that, and I would play the hell out of that. And you've sold me on that idea. Mine's a little bit more scaled down and basic, but one that I know a lot of people have cried out for many, many years. I mean, this is a name I've just thought of: WWE versus WCW Generations. Ooh. I would love it. I would love it to be through the rosters of WWE. So you go from like the 80s. So basically, when WCW kind of evolved from what it was to its main product, and the WWE. So you have it through the 80s, the 90s, all the way up to where WCW ended in 2001. And you'd have both rosters. You'd have your WCW, your WCW Saturday nights. You'd have your Thunder, your Nitros. You'd have your Raws, Superstars, Shotgun Challenge, all that stuff, all those arenas, those things all there. The rosters available, maybe release a certain DLC packs every so often that you could buy. So say, for example, you could buy Raven's Flock DLC or, the Disciples of Apocalypse, like those factions you could download and purchase DLC factions and things like that. But for different years, you could have different versions of like Lex Luger. You'd have like the Total Package. You'd have him in his Wolf Pack version. You'd have him as his Full Horseman version. So you'd have all these different. So you'd have your Flairs where Flair gets his hair cut in like the late 90s and things like all of that with all the original themes. So like, as I said, licensing not an issue, all the arenas and that. And honestly, I just think if you could also have something where you could do like a Worlds Collide sort of pay-per-view where you'd have like WCW in their prime versus WWF in their prime.
You know what? I would take that idea, and we're going to wrap this up on this note. I would take that idea, but I would go similar to a manager sim where you could run one of the two companies. So you could run the WWE or WCW during the Monday Night Wars, right?
It needs to be more management sims.
They do. And we will do another game talking about some management sims. But where you run the company, you contract negotiate, you talent steal where you want, you book your own main events. You can either book it the same way as they would have done during Nitro. Do you turn Hogan heel at Bash of the Beach? Do you turn Sting heel? What would be that sort of scenario? And that's what I would do. A massive showcase. But that is it this week for the wrestling video games. We're going to go to our final break of the night. I'll be back to wrap up. Next week, we are going to be talking about a topic. And I will let Stefan tell you what topic that is out of the next 3 options. Number 1, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Number 2, the Cena heel turn from 05. Number 3, Die, Rocky, Die.
I think I'm going to, because you said the Cena one was very specific, I'm going to go with Die, Rocky, Die, because that for Dwayne Johnson was career defining.
We're going to do it next week. Die, Rocky, Die will be our topic. There'll be a post up on Celebrate Wrestling already. That would have gone up after the Triple H Part 3 show last week. And let us know what you think about Die, Rocky, Die. Was it monumental? Did it affect The Rock? Could it have happened to anybody else? We want to know your thoughts, and we'll talk about that next week on this show. We're going to break. Stefan, thanks. I'll see you next week.
Well done, Andy. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome back to Legends and Champions, the final part of this week's show. That music there, the classic remixed version of Tecmo World Wrestling that we talked about in the main show. Okay, so one of the things that we said in that, if you were listening there, was we're going to come back with a 2K25 review. And I pre-ordered this. I got this Bloodline edition on the 7th of March. And with the Bloodline edition, you get, all the Roman Reigns stuff, all the Bloodline extras, the Rock Persona card, Nation of Domination, and all the Deadman edition. And that's all well and good, and I'm not going to go into detail on what that is because you can find it. What I do want to talk about, though, is my thoughts on the game so far. Now, I've, as you know from listening to that last bit, I've played 2K games and WWE games since the original NES. So I've followed the lineage, I've followed the history of the games. And the one thing that you get when you're in this next gen version is what's different. What makes the game different? And it's fair to say that they've made subtle changes. You know, chain wrestling is back, which hasn't been seen since I think it was 2K19. Some of the character detail is slightly less than what it was in 2K24. But what they've added is body damage. So now you can clearly see, you know, the red marks when they're being chopped, or the blood stains, or just the wear and tear of the body. That's a nice subtle improvement. Let's kick it off by looking at the layout. So the layout this time is really tidy. It's in tiles. It's down the bottom half of the screen, and the top half is like a big banner relating to it. It's nice and clean. You know where you're going. It's not complicated to view. When you open it up, the first thing that you see on the tile is My Play, so you can just go in and play the exhibition matches. And once you go into that, again, they followed this tile format all the way through with different match types. Unfortunately, one of the match types that they've got rid of is the traditional elimination 4-on-4 Survivor Series match. But you can create it in custom matches, which is also in the game. And I've done that, and I've created the Survivor Series match. The additions that they've got this year are Underground. There's also Enhanced Special Guest Referee, which means you can do it more than just a singles one-on-one. You can go right the way through to tag team matches. The Bloodline Rules match is an interesting concept because it's just like what you get when you watch it on Raw or on a PLE. And you can have a teammate and they can come in and they can assist you, and you press a control system and all of a sudden Jey Uso will appear, or Jimmy Uso, or Sami Zayn, for example, if you're playing as Roman Reigns. My Rise. One of the things we talked about there was the My Rise story. This year, they've really enhanced it. And I think My Rise is tremendous. Instead of doing 2 single-track stories where you've got 2 created wrestlers and you do 1 male, 1 female, you're still doing that, but you're doing a combined story, which really does get you involved. I've loved it. More than ever this time, the decisions that you make really impact where the story is going to go. And that adds a sense of intrigue. Now, it said that you have to complete it 4 times in order to unlock everything. And there's loads of things you can unlock in this game. The biggest one, in my opinion, is the Triple H Throne Destruction entrance. Now, yes, that's AEW, but can you imagine doing a match between Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania with the game Triple H, or the King of Kings Triple H, and destroying that throne? I mean, that's something we've all wanted to do over the years, so that's cracking. My faction has also had an improvement, and as I said in that previous bit, I'm not a fan of my faction. I never have been. I'm not a fan of the microtransactions. I'm not a fan of having to pay money for anything. I've done it, and I'm my worst critic because I've done it, but I'm not a fan of it. However, what I will say, the world tour that they've brought into my faction now, where you literally go across different territories and you play different matches with different superstars, is a unique concept. And I like it because you're getting things at the end of it. Some of the rewards are some of the Persona cards. The CM Punk 10 Persona card is available in one of those territories. What does that mean? It means that you can take that character that you've just won in my faction and play it in the main game. So I like that. I can't do it, but I like it. The other big new arrival was the Island. And this is only available on next-gen consoles, so PS4, PS5 and Xbox XS. I'm going to say Xbox 360. Xbox XS. It's very much like the NBA games, where you have free roam and you go around, you do different challenges. I'm not too far into it. I'm not buying it at the moment. I'm not buying the concept of it. I need to really sit down and play the Island to see if it's worth it. But what I have noticed is it's a lot of transactions. And whereas my faction, when you would use the VC, the virtual currency on my faction, you're now using that same virtual currency on both the Island and my faction. So it's very quickly going to run out if you do start buying. So it's very much of a cash cow by WWE 2K. But the one thing, and you heard it, and you heard the intro in the previous segment, was Showcase. And this year's showcase, they've gone different. You're playing as Bloodline, but Bloodline over the years. So you're playing as Yokozuna versus Hulk Hogan from King of the Ring 93. You've got Rocky Maivia versus Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley from Thursday Raw Thursday for the Intercontinental Championship. You've got the Islanders. You've got Haku. You've got Rikishi. I did it for Austin. I did it for The Rock. You've got everyone out there. It's tremendous, and with Paul Heyman doing the introductions, really just adds that level of validity. And one of the other things about the showcase mode, which is really cool, is in some of the matches, and I believe there's 5, you can rewrite history. So when the Bloodline or a member of the Fatu and Anoa'i family loses, you could recreate it and change it to Bloodline wins. Nice, like that. They've also got rid of the video cutscene. So when you're watching a match in the old games, it would cut to a video representation of the match, and they would take the commentary out. So it seemed very disjointed. Now they've animated it, and they've kept the commentary in, albeit Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and Byron Saxton. But again, you don't lose that flow. You stay in the moment. You're still there. You're still in the feel of the game, and then you come back and boom, you carry on. So lovely new addition. The universe mode has been expanded greatly. You can now cut promos, albeit they don't talk. Yeah, it's weird. Don't get me wrong, it is weird. Because you thought that they could have done some voice clips, pre-program what the decisions are going to be, and you could do the voice clips. But they haven't, and it's weird, and that does take you out of the game. But you've got more openings now to do what you want to do. All in all, the game is enjoyable. Is it more enjoyable than 2K24? I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because there is some difference, but again, there's not a lot, right? It's a bit like FIFA 24, EA 24 or whatever it is, to 25 version, or NBA 24 to NBA 25, or Madden 24 to Madden 25. The subtle differences are there, but the gameplay is the same. So what's the enticement? What's making you? What's the hook wanting to buy it? I jumped on the gravy train and I bought the Bloodline edition because I always do. It's the one thing I do every year is I get the WWE game, and I've got a friend of mine, funnily enough, who I'm hopefully seeing this week. And we're going to be playing some 2K together, and he does exactly the same thing. Would I do it again next year? Would I get 2K26? I don't know. And that's not because I don't like the game, but it would need to be substantially enhanced. There would need to be some major differences now in order to get it for pre-order. I most likely would get it, but I'd wait a year. So I'd be running a year behind. And I don't think that's a problem. The one good thing about this game is the DLC pack. And, for the first time you get to play as New Jack. You've got the Legends pack, Saturday Night's Main Event, which has got Sid in it, Jesse the Body Ventura, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, Jordan Grace is going to be in the game, Penta's going to be in the game, the Machine Guns are going to be in the game. The commentary, they're using the same 3-man team, Byron Saxton, Corey Graves, and Michael Cole. I don't understand why, right? You've got Joe Testatori, you've got Michael Cole, you've got Wade Barrett, you've got Pat McAfee. Why not put them in the game? Renew it, give it that fresh bit of blood, right? I would love to have a Raw commentary team and a SmackDown commentary team and the NXT commentary team. Make it realistic. It's not hard to do. Give them the same lines if you need to. Give them the same lines so you record 3 different sets of commentary. But I get it. It's cheaper. It's easier. On the whole, it's a fantastic game. And what I've played of it so far, and bear in mind that as I said at the top of the show, I'm currently laid up in bed. I've had my Xbox brought up in the TV, and I'm sat there playing some WWE. So this time next week, I'll be able to give you a much better review. It's enjoyable. It's worth it. And if you're a die-hard fan, get it. Be careful of the microtransactions, because it's very easy in this game to run out of VC and have to rebuy. And keep an eye on the locker codes, because the locker codes have already released. There's a Persona card available until March the 16th, which is Elite Rock WWE 25, and that will give you the Persona card of the Mattel Elite Rock character, which they're still continuing this year, and there's hundreds of them going through. My rise, one of the unlockables is Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. There is a way of getting him. Haven't worked it out yet, but there is a way of getting him, and you can have that full character. Now, last year, that was a Persona card that you had to buy. This year, part of the game. So again, it goes back to the microtransactions bit. All right, that's it for this week of Legends and Champions. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at wrestling video games. I'm going to go back to bed and recover. But next week, we will be back with another episode of LAC, this time focusing on the topic of Die Rocky Die. The moment when The Rock's career changed from jobber to main eventer. We're going to be talking about that next week on the show. Don't forget, here at Celebrate Wrestling, there is loads of things that you can listen to, including our good friends from the Greek World Order, Mitch and Dimitri, the alternate commentary table, every Saturday on Celebrate Wrestling, and Mike is back every Sunday with Maguire on Wrestling. Free to air, free to listen. All we ask you to do is click follow and maybe leave us a review. That helps us in the rankings. Over the next few weeks on Legends, we've got a lot of things coming up for you. We are heading into WrestleMania season, and I've also signed an interview for a British wrestling legend. We'll be giving you more details on that in the coming weeks. That will be a really fun and interesting Legends episode for those of you internationally, because this guy is not only a big name in the UK, he's competed in TNA and Ring of Honor. There's your clues. I will see you next week for more Legends and Champions. Until then, thanks for listening. See you soon. Bye-bye now.
This has been Legends and Champions with Andy Evans. Thank you for listening.